Hey everyone, welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies for Some Places. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and my pronouns are he, him.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him, and I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Before we get into the movies this week, I just wanted to mention you should go check out our Patreon if you are not a member and join up, because we are talking about the delightful 1940 romp, His Girl Friday. It's a fast-talking, smooth-talking, fourth-wall breaking masterpiece of American cinema. So,
Madcap.
Madcap. This is what they used to call a screwball comedy. Yeah, so go check that out. If you're not a patron, please consider becoming one. And thank you to our patrons for being patrons. Anyway, on this show this week, we have 3 movies. We have the documentary, The Truffle Hunters, which is about exactly what it sounds. We have the horror film, The Power. And we have the South African film, Moffie. And we're going to kick things off this week with The Truffle Hunters. Which, yeah.
You said that so ominously.
I know. Well, you see the word hunter and you just want to say, it's a hunter. He's hunting his prey. Except they're hunting, fungus. So,
Yes.
yeah. So this is a documentary directed by Michael Dweck and Gregory Kershaw, and it is about these mostly older Italian gentlemen who have dogs and run around the woods in the forests of Piedmont, Italy, looking for truffles, and how they try to not get screwed over by the man buying truffles from them, who then sells them to restaurants.
Yeah, and mostly, some of them cooperate with each other, but it's like hyper competitive. And I think that's the most... for me, was one of the most interesting aspects of this, knowing literally nothing about this subculture and then finding out that it's like hyper competitive. It's very cutthroat.
Yeah.
And then, most of the people here are the plot summary in IMDb refers to them as 70 or 80 years young, which is a very accurate description of the folks that are in this documentary.
That's true, because these are all older men, but they have the the boisterousness of teenagers. I mean, they are fucking truffle hunters, and it's what they do, and they love their dogs, and no one's gonna stop them from hunting truffles. Not even
like the guy sneaking out on his wife to go truffle hunting because she keeps telling him he can't because he's 87 and he's gonna get hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he gets. I think the first time you see him is right after he's been smacked in the face by a tree branch.
Yeah.
Yes.
Going around in the dark.
Yeah. Following his dog, who is like hot on the trail of some truffles.
Carlo, I think is his name.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed watching Carlo and his wife, and all of their interactions were quite amusing.
Yeah. And I like how he's, she's telling him, you can't do this, you can't do that. And he's basically like, eh. And she says to him finally in that last scene when they're having dinner together, you're just going to do what you want anyway. And he's like, and then the movie ends with him sneaking out of the house through an open window.
I love that. I love that she says, you got to be thinking about the end of your life. You're 87. And he's like, what if this is just the beginning?
Yeah.
Like, what a great attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a typical man response to be purposefully obtuse in that situation.
That's true.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think my favorite character, though, was the guy who was I don't remember his name. He's got the long beard and he was always wearing a beret.
Oh, God.
And he's at the typewriter writing the most ridiculous letter. And, and
he's so angry.
He's so angry. He's the best truffle hunter of all of them. And he refuses to hunt for truffles anymore because it takes too much. People don't respect the process or the land or whatever. And every time there's only one time when he's in a good mood, It's when he's having a drink with his friend and it looks
yes.
like the wood drying shed. I don't know what it is, but they're having a drink and they're having a smoke and they're having a laugh, and you can tell that they're friends. But every other time you see him, he's like, everyone's bullshit. Fucking people going through my land. Except he doesn't have that accent.
No.
I love when the guy, the buyer, comes along and he's like, I told you, I'm not selling to you. And he like throws a log down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great scene.
Oh my God.
He's so
that guy's fired
surly.
up.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's so surly and he's just really entertaining. Yeah, I love that scene where he's at the typewriter, like furiously, angrily typing with a cigarette in his hand. And he's talking about how like he needs to finish the cigarette, otherwise he can't see, but then he keeps smoking and keeps typing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
These guys are such characters. I loved that. I loved watching them and how hilarious they were. I loved their relationships with their dogs. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, they have closer relationships with their dogs than their spouses, it seems like.
Yeah.
You
Nothing wrong with that. No. Maybe that is to some people. I shouldn't say that, but
yeah.
I thought maybe if I was the spouse, I might feel some type of way.
That's true. And then when the one guy, his dog eats poison and dies.
I know, it's so sad.
Yeah, he's just distraught beyond words.
Yeah. That guy was entertaining too. Like he was playing his drums, Dave. I'm sure you enjoyed that.
Oh, that was great.
I thought of you too, Dave.
Yeah. I love that his dog had a camera attached, so we got to see the dog hunting for truffles. I thought that was
the dog GoPro,
really creative and just such an interesting perspective that you wouldn't get in another documentary. And I think for me, what's so great about this documentary is the cinematography. It's just so
beautiful,
inventive.
Yeah,
I can't think of a documentary I've seen in recent memory that treats its subjects like they would in a narrative, in terms of like the framing and like the lighting and the way that the cinematography is done. It's just so beautiful and impressive and just breathtaking in so many scenes where it's like, what's that guy doing? Oh, he's loading logs in his little fireplace, but still that's gorgeous to look at.
Yeah, the cinematography that way kind of reminded me of the Honey documentary, Dave, you and I saw last year. Which is same thing, Evan. The cinematography is just exquisite and has very much a kind of narrative feel to it. And also, speaking of GoPros on dogs, it only happens in a couple of scenes, but in the great documentary Stray by Elizabeth Lowe, she does that too with a stray dog. And it immediately reminded me of that too. And I was like, what a great perspective to see a dog's eye view.
I also want to mention that this movie does kind of have a villain.
Oh, you're right.
And I can't remember what his name was, but he's the guy wearing the suit, buying truffles. And at the end, you see him eating some kind of egg dish. I don't know exactly how you would describe it. And the woman who is serving him shaves so much truffle onto it. He's got to have a good $300 or $400 worth of truffle shavings on that fucking meal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that scene, I think, is the most effective in the documentary. And Dave, you were just talking about the man crying over his dead dog, and that's how this film juxtaposes this man crying about his dead dog and this guy living in the lap of luxury, eating this decadent fucking meal by himself at a restaurant with so much truffle shaved all over it, taking his sweet ass fucking time. And I just thought that was such a striking juxtaposition of the people here who are doing all this grunt work and barely scraping by, and this fucking guy is just like the trader, collector, whatever you want to call him, and he has got the world. And meanwhile, this poor guy's dog died because he ate poison, because these people are so fucking competitive over this thing.
Yeah.
It also, on a lesser scale, also reminded me of the scene that also comes pretty soon after, where the salesman is sitting with his daughter eating and is talking about how he never eats truffles. And people are like, you must eat truffles all the time. And he's like, no, actually I don't. I'm busy selling them, And so I thought that was kind of an interesting scene to include, right along with those two as well.
Yeah. I also loved that how his daughter in that scene was just like chowing down this little girl on her pasta. His dad's kind of having this this deep-sided but relatively one-sided conversation, and she's just like, see, papa,
Mhm.
Just
Yes.
eating her pasta.
Tastes like garlic. I agree. Nom 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 nom.
Yum, yum, yum.
It does look like it's a good bowl of pasta, I have to say.
Yeah, it did look good.
So, I mean, I thought that the Truffle Hunters was a hoot, and
Mhm.
well worthy of your time. And regarding the cinematography, Evan and Megan, I agree with both of you. It is striking, and it's a lot of it is so perfectly. I don't want to use the word staged, although that's really probably the only word you can use. Like, for example,
Mhm.
the last shot of the movie when I don't remember his name, Carlo, when he
He's climbing out the window.
climbs out the window of his house. I mean, that shot is, the window is in the center of the frame, nice black triangle, and then you see this, image emerge from the inky blackness. And there are a lot of shots like that where it's just like the dinner scene, the dining scene with the dealer and his daughter, or the older man who has $500 worth of truffles on his eggs. Just everything is put together so beautifully, and the scenes in the forest, the greens are just so green and the browns are so brown, and everything's just so rich. It's really amazing how, I mean, I feel like I don't see a lot of documentaries where I'm just like, man, this fucking looks great. So, it really does stand out in that way.
Yeah, it is interesting how it does look meticulously staged, even though it's absolutely not in many cases. And you're right, the color palette is just so vibrant. Yeah, it is really striking.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that. Is like, how much of this do you think they set up? And I'm guessing what they probably did is they set up their shot or whatever, and then they told their subjects, all right, go do your thing. Because I don't really think you could tell any of these guys, hey, stand over here 3 feet to the left.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I got that impression. And yeah, speaking to your point about it, the staging, it's a lot of kind of stationary shots. Likely, it almost feels like maybe it's like on a tripod or something. It's a very stable stationary shot. But I agree with you that I think they probably just set up a shot and they were like, just go do your thing, and then we'll get some good stuff here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Dweck is a photographer as well as a filmmaker, so I'm sure he knows how to get good photography looking, like, look shots that are film, of course, but look like photos.
Yeah. I would be interested to see some of the outtakes, by the way, with the cigarette smoking typewriter letter writing guy.
Oh, you want to talk about framing? You're like sitting on a bookshelf or something. You're looking at that guy between these two very large stacks of books, and he's just right there at the center of the frame at his typewriter. I thought that was like a really interesting perspective.
And I want to add that he's just furious while he's writing this letter.
Yeah,
which is hilarious.
Yeah, and however he finishes a sentence and he's like, "Oh, I better have some wine,"
Yeah, he's drinking out of like a mug too. He's not even drinking out of like a wine glass.
No. Speaking about the interesting framing, something that also stuck out to me from a framing perspective, but also a thematic perspective, I thought it was really funny and also felt incredibly absurdist at the photography of the truffle on the raised red pillow in between the bottles of wine. And like just how like they have to get the bottles just so, and how it frames the truffle, and then all of the photos, all of the cameras flashing just to get a photo of this truffle. It just was like, yeah, I mean, I know truffles are expensive and rare and all of that, but still, there's just still some absurdism there. And it was a great scene.
Yeah. I agree.
I want to point out that you don't need to be an appreciator of the truffle to enjoy this.
No,
this
don't.
is just, I mean, I happen to think truffles are just fine. I don't go out of my way. Like if I see them on a menu, I'm not like, yes, truffles, but like, I also am not like, ooh, truffles, it's like, they're fine. But oh man, I would just love to see more like I said, the outtakes. I would just love to see what they left out. But yeah, if anybody else has anything to say, please do. Otherwise, I think we should move on to our next movie.
I think one just final comment on the cinematography. I love the back alley scenes where they were making deals. You'd see these guys in silhouette, like looking over the merchandise and haggling. I thought that those scenes were just incredibly fascinating, and I love that they were kind of these little like dark alley deals going on.
Yeah, the one that stuck out to me the most was the one in front of the car, and it was raining, and they were using the car's headlights to look at the truffles.
Yes, I loved that.
Yeah. So we liked this, in case you couldn't tell everyone. But anyway, moving on to our next movie of the night, we have The Power, which actually came out yesterday, Thursday. If you're listening to this on the day it comes out, Friday. This is a horror movie written and directed by Corinna Faith, 1973 England. A young nurse is forced to work the night shift in a crumbling hospital as striking miners switch off the power across Britain. But inside the walls lurks a terrifying presence that threatens to consume her and everyone around her. That's from IMDb, by the way.
Yeah, they also have the year off, by the way. It's 1974.
Yep. Yeah, that's true too.
I just want to point that out because that bothered me on IMDb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
Nice job, Evan. I'm glad we're in sync on that.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is I remember I'm watching this and it's like 1974, blah, blah, blah. And then I read somewhere 1973 and I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. But I didn't have the strong reaction that you two did. So normally I would be like, fuck those marketing people. But, you guys took care of it for me. So anyway, this movie stars Rose Williams as the young nurse, Val. And a lot of other people. And I thought this was effectively creepy and had quite the message at its center about silencing people.
I agree.
And the damage that does to everyone.
I mean, I feel similarly about it. I really dug the score. The score I thought was so fucking creepy and unsettling. It just had me on edge the entire movie. That was one thing I can say is that regardless of what was happening on screen, regardless of like plot, like the movie itself to me was just unsettling the entire time from the beginning with this creepy fucking score and just oof.
Yeah. I mean, there were some things in it that were way too on the nose, like the drawings on the wall of like the children, with one with their finger at her lips and then another one like off in the corner, like looking scared. And it's like, I don't really think that would actually be in a children's hospital, but okay.
I will say I like the dissolve that it goes from Val's face to that drawing, but I completely agree that this is not the only example. There's way too much heavy foreshadowing that I think is a big problem in this film.
Yeah, I think the foreshadowing is, I think that by the time, I don't even know if you'd call it a twist. There's a girl there named Gail who has been, she disappeared. And of course, she didn't disappear. She was killed and done away with. And she, would you say possesses? I mean, I don't even know.
Yeah, she possesses.
Yeah, she
first haunts and then possesses. So it's like a ghost story and a possession story.
Right. She possesses Val, who also has been abused by, Val was raised in what they would have called back in the day, an orphan's home. And she was abused by a man who worked there and told people about it. And then the people at the orphanage and the police convinced her to say, no, I made it all up.
Mm-hmm.
And so the movie is about that, child abuse and silencing people or silencing women or young girls. And I just want to say, by the way, the first time we see the doctor, is it Dr. Franklin? Is that his name?
It is.
The handsome, good-looking guy?
Yes.
When you first saw him, did you think to yourself, well, this guy's bad? Because I did. Okay.
Yes, I did.
Good.
Yeah. I got the sense he was a little bit off, a little creepy, a little too friendly, if you know what I mean, for a horror movie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when he, Val finds a 13-year-old girl in the staff bathroom or whatever and takes her back to the children's ward. And Dr. Franklin is like, oh, you've been out of your bed. You better get back there so that we can take care of you. Ha ha. Not ha. He doesn't say ha ha. But the way he says it, I was just like, ew. So,
Yeah,
that
it's
he,
total Creepville.
that he turns out, spoiler, to be the fucking villain of all villains. You find out that not only did he abuse Gail, although they don't really get into the specifics, but he did burn her body in the furnace, in the incinerator. And it's like, man, that is some dark shit.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to add that jump scares really bug me as a rule, almost as a rule, more of a guideline than a rule. And there are a million jump scares in this movie, but they didn't bother me as much because even though you were saying, Megan, that the foreshadowing bothered you, I think that some of the jump scares, because they are foreshadowing, because you'll see Gail's, reflection in the mirror, not mirror, in like some glass, and then Val will look behind her and obviously she's not there, but that it turns out that Gail is doing the haunting and Gail does possess Val, and Val, what would you say, takes revenge on Dr. Franklin? I don't know. You get the impression that the three of them, there's another girl, we mentioned her earlier, Saba, 13 years old, who is a patient at the hospital. I can't remember what she has other than she has rickets. I can't remember what her other condition was, but it was something I want to say pulmonary. I don't know. The movie ends with Val and a Gail in the flesh, and Saba, kind of, you get the impression they're going to be looking out for the kids in the ward from now on. Did you think that was what the ending was? The way that the hospital administrator walked off into the dark corridor and then they attacked him, and that was how the movie ended? I don't know. That's how I felt.
I definitely got an avenging angel
Yeah.
vibe from the three of them in the phone call saying, you better look out. She doesn't want to be put to rest.
The phone call. That's right. I forgot about the phone call.
Yeah.
I want to mention that I think that I have not seen Rose Williams before. I'm sure she's been in other things that I just haven't seen. I thought she was fucking dynamite as Val. I don't know how you guys thought.
She's good.
Yeah. But I just, the kind of how she has to go from being sort of meek and quiet to just, devilish isn't the right word, but I'll use the word devilish. And that scene when, Gail throws her through that window and then she gets up and she's clearly possessed and she's just like, yeah. It's like, wow, you're standing on broken glass and you just came through a window and fuck, you're something to be reckoned with.
Yeah, her performance is definitely compelling.
Yeah.
I like the way that I said this in my review, so I'm going to quote myself. I think she generated a lot of pathos for her character. I think you really feel for her because, she's super kind and friendly, but she also has this like fragile timidity about her and meekness, like you said. But she really turns it on when she's possessed and has a ferocity to her that I think is really great. So I think her performance is, for me, probably the best thing about the film.
Yeah.
I have other thoughts, but we can.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the foreshadowing again, because it's interesting you brought that up because I don't know what you would describe it. The contortions that Val goes through when she's mimicking the positions that Gail was put in during her abuse. Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about the foreshadowing? Or is that...
I'm kind of talking about all of it. Like, I pretty much had the entire plot pegged right from the start, and I don't normally do that. So I think it's the mural drawings, it's the reflections in the glass, it's the contortioned body and the way her body is held. It was very obvious to me just right from the start. I was like, oh, okay, Val is a rape victim, or rape survivor rather. And I knew instantly where this was going. There's so much, there's such a heavy motif of burning in this film, not just from what we see with the body in flames, but also the cinders, the soot, the fiery furnace, the match being struck, the cigarette lit, Carrie, the Stephen King novel. I'm like, Jesus, like they're really hammering it home heavy with the burning. So I'm like, okay, Gail, or I didn't know her name at the time, but I'm like, okay, whoever the ghost is, clearly was burned and was probably raped, which she was.
Yeah.
And and I'm not saying that's necessarily bad, but for me, it just was really heavy-handed that I saw just everything coming. And for me, if a film is effective enough or is good enough or is really exceptional, I don't mind if I know everything that's coming. That's not that doesn't detract from my enjoyment. But for me, this did here. And so I think while I think this is good in certain ways, and I definitely liked many parts of it, like I really, really liked Rose Williams' performance, like you said. I really liked the message about silencing, and there's some great dissolves and some great superimposed shot of Val's face, onto a poster of someone's face where their hand is over the mouth, talking about being silenced. And that's a really great visual. There's some really great visual flourishes here. And the message is great. Like, we're talking about poverty, we're talking about classism, we're talking about racism, we're talking about sexism, or, the way that Val is trying to navigate literally physically amongst men, and they're not moving for her, and the lecherous Nev, the security guard, and a guy tries to go up her skirt in the elevator. And we're talking about power dynamics, we're talking about rape, we're talking about a lot of shit here. And it's really ambitious. And I love that. But yet I also feel like the execution for me fell short. And so I wasn't as excited about this as you would think on paper I would be, because I love horror films that talk about social issues, which most or many of them do. But yeah, I love the feminist commentary running through this. I just wish the execution for me had been a bit tighter and sharper, and maybe a tad more subtle.
Yeah, I agree with you about the heavy-handedness for sure.
Yeah, it's really heavy-handed, and I don't think it needs to be. I think you can trust your audience that they're going to follow you on your journey. And when you're kind of like throwing everything at them, it's a bit much. So yeah, so it didn't quite work for me, but that doesn't mean I still didn't like it. I did. I just think it could have been better.
I'd say that's a fair critique of the movie, because I really did enjoy it quite a bit. And I love all of the commentary, and I love the layers to it. But taking a step back, can agree, though, that it's it was some heavy foreshadowing. Dare I even say five shadowing during the
movie. That's amazing. I love it. Yeah. I might steal it.
But yeah, it is pretty heavy-handed. And although I didn't have as much of it pegged, I don't think, it was very clear to me from the opening minutes that Val was a survivor of abuse. And then that was going to play very heavily into it, with all of the things that you mentioned, with all of the metaphors about it involving fire and burning, and just like that stuff was clear. But I agree. I think it's a little heavy-handed, and probably, to your point, Dave, a little heavy on jump scares, even though in the moment it wasn't bothering me too much.
Yeah. I also want to bring up, because I looked this up because it kind of bugged me, that the nurse is reading Carrie. And yes, Carrie came out in 1974, and
it did
in early in the year. So they got the timing right. Fine. But I was thinking to myself, this nurse is reading a hardcover copy of Carrie. And if I recall correctly, Carrie did not sell well in hardcover. It sold in paperback. And so I looked it up, and I was correct. So
you are correct, actually.
So I was like, should I be irritated about this? Well, I am. So
whether you should or not is irrelevant. You already are.
Yeah. Because you look it up and you read that it sold 13 and 14,000 copies in hardcover in the United States. And then you think, okay, that's the United States, where in the mid 70s, there are about, 280 million Americans. So there are about 50 million Britons. And I think that nurse was actually Irish, if I recall. But so where the fuck did she get Carrie? There's no fucking way that she bought Carrie in hardcover. No way. Anyway, that's all.
I mean, maybe somebody bought it in hardcover.
But, considering the couple of times they mention how they don't make any money and that they're all basically poor.
That's true.
Unless it was a library book, and it didn't look like one.
No.
It was kind of a stretch, I thought, a little flourish that I didn't agree with.
It's funny though. I agree with you, but also it was weird. Like, there's so much about the burning, like I clearly said, but at the same time, I kind of appreciated that more slightly subtle nod to the burning, because it's burning as vengeance, and I kind of liked that. So rather than always so visual, or I do appreciate that she also, the director Faith tried to incorporate smell too, like how Val, would cover her nose and be like, I smell something burning. And like, she's she's coughing up black ooze. So she's trying to evoke other senses. And I kind of appreciate that she's also still trying to bring up the burning theme through vengeance through another form. But it was kind of, I felt unnecessary because there is already so much of it in there. But anyway.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong. When they finally kill the doctor, the three of them, they don't burn him. They just
No, they don't.
kill him.
They scream him to death.
Yeah, I'm not sure
blast
exactly.
his ears out. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
How.
He's just, dead, open-mouthed on the floor, which I'm sure was very horrifying for him in the moment, but it doesn't seem like quite the equal retribution. But, who the fuck am I? So.
No, it felt a bit anticlimactic to me too. So.
Yeah.
Weren't they all screaming at him in a way that blew up his brain? I wish his brain exploded.
Yeah, I don't know if his brain exploded, but maybe emotionally it exploded.
Well,
his psyche exploded.
It was strong enough to kill him, so
yes.
I guess it was something.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. Well, that, unless anybody else has to say more, is the power. The power.
I do have something else.
Oh, then please do. Well,
like Big Mouth Megan, I knew you'd have one more
time
thing.
cop hasn't stepped in yet, so don't worry.
I'm under the gun here. Something interesting and kind of disturbing I noticed was the depiction of race in the film, and like the matron, is a black woman, and she's kind of a villain at first, but then she redeems herself at the end. So I'm like, okay. But then Comfort, one of the other nurses who's there on the night shift, it's disturbing that when Val is possessed, she drinks bleach and then blasts it in her face.
Oh, is that what that was? Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, that's really disturbing to have bleach being spewed on a black woman's face. Like, I mean, it's disturbing on anybody's face. Like, I want to be clear. But there was something just really unsettling about that. I was like, oh my God, that's even more unsettling. And then Comfort ditches the babies to run out the window. And I'm like,
yeah, I thought that was a weird choice on her part to jump out the window and then leave babies just sitting. That part didn't add up to me.
Yeah, same. And it was really, that was really weird. And then also, and I know this is tied into a commentary on impoverished people because the matron calls people living in poverty animals. But Terry, one of the other nurses, also comments and calls them animals when she's referring to Saba, because she's like, oh, look at Snow White. She's so good with the animals. But because Saba is a girl of color, I'm like, oh my God. It just was more disturbing, the intersection of racism and classism happening through the film. And so, I just thought it was a really interesting commentary that was kind of more subtle happening through the film, which is interesting since so many things are so heavy-handed and overt, but one that I thought was really, really interesting nonetheless.
Yeah. I also want to mention that that nurse, Terry, the Irish nurse who's reading Carrie.
Yes.
About, I don't remember exactly when, I think it's after the first time that Val is possessed and they've tried to convince her that, she's made it all up. And then they see Terry sees bruises on Val's neck and she's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And then she just fucking leaves. She's like, the building's not locked down yet. I'm leaving.
Yeah, and the Comfort's like, no, it is locked. And she's like, no, I know a window. I'm going out.
Yeah. And then she's never seen again in the movie.
No,
they make very clear in this movie who dies and who doesn't. So so Terry got away.
Yeah. Good for you, Terry. I hope you're reading Carrie and enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to know though, when the character sees the bruises on her neck, is it just all right, this is just too weird, or this is real, or what is the rationale there for just fucking saying peace out, other than I'm scared shitless, which is perfectly valid. But then the bruises disappear and Comfort doesn't see them.
Do.
So
yeah, it is really interesting though. Also, Terry is also the one who questions the veracity of what Val is saying when she says something attacked her. And she's like, I've heard stories about you. And then as we find out, Babs, her bullying classmate from childhood, also accuses her of making it up about the headmaster who abused her. So that's a really pointed commentary about not only women being silenced, but about how they're not believed when they do speak up.
Yeah. Well, Babs finds out that she should have believed the hard way. So,
Yep.
boy. Actually, her death itself, I mean, what happened to her eyes? Did I know that they were gouged, but were they gouged out? Because if they were gouged out, she wasn't really acting like she was in all that much discomfort, but
yeah, I don't know.
It looked like her eyelids and things were still there, but I don't know if they just got like poked to the point where she couldn't see anything anymore.
Yeah,
maybe
I'm not sure.
Maybe her eyes were scarred. I don't know.
But Babs does end up dead at the bottom of a stairwell. So, oops.
Oops.
Oh, Babs, you should have taken Val seriously. So,
yeah. But the last thing I want to say about this movie is, like I said, I appreciate its ambition, and I really do like the message. And Rose Williams is great.
Yeah, super ambitious. That's for sure. In a good way,
yes.
I think. Great. Well, then let's move on to our third and final film of the evening, everybody. Moffie, which is a South African movie. And I guess I should get this out of the way up front. Moffie is a slur in Afrikaans.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say that, I'm talking about the title of the movie. I'm not...
Correct.
Yeah. It's like if I were South African and spoke Afrikaans, I'd probably feel differently. But anyway, who wants to tackle this? I'll read the IMDb line and then, one of you can take it. But a young man in 1981 South Africa must complete his brutal and racist 2 years of compulsory military service while desperately maintaining the secrecy of his homosexuality, which is an accurate one-sentence description of this movie. Oh my God, This movie's fucking brutal. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's definitely rough. And it's interesting to me because I saw a film that covers very similar material called Canary that came out a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, although it's a similar situation, it's about a closeted man who's in the South African army around the same time period during the 80s. That movie has more of a light touch because it's also like kind of a musical, and this is like the hard, serious version of that movie. For me, it was like an interesting juxtaposition of having these two very similar kind of stories, but this one being, heavy. This is like, by comparison, the Full Metal Jacket version of that other story, because we're seeing Nicholas here is our main character, and he's conscripted. There's some title cards in the beginning that explain that, South Africa is at war with, I think, did they say Angola was they were fighting against? Yeah. And they were fighting against the Soviet-backed Angola and fighting against communism. And that was, so they conscripted anyone 16 and older to join the army. And so he's just joining the army as part of that conscription. And yeah, so we see them go through basic training, and we see them later in combat in the movie. And it's just much heavier version of this kind of similar story of like, oh man, this is a really racist regime and really homophobic and awful situation to be in, to be a person who's homosexual and forced to be closeted in this situation where, there's scenes in the movie where literally every other word feels like a slur, whether it's either a racist slur or a homophobic slur. And that's mostly the drill sergeant, who I would describe as an evil Milo Ventimiglia.
Yeah, I get it. Imagine R. Lee Ermey from Full Metal Jacket,
Jesus.
like 40 years younger, and just, it's kind of funny when you watch Full Metal Jacket now. It's like that performance is so iconic that it almost takes some of the wind out of how horrifying it is. So imagine that guy younger, in better shape, and more evil, and then you kind of have an idea of the character of the drill sergeant. Jesus.
With his evil mustache.
With his evil mustache. Even in the last scene where he's coming to, after Nicholas has killed someone in sort of battle. I don't really, he killed an old man trying to cross the border, and the drill sergeant goes up. He's like, Nicholas, and then he just sits by him for about 10 seconds and just kind of looks at him, and then gets up and walks away. And like, this is your version of, your first kill. It's tough. Holy shit.
Was he actually there? I wasn't convinced he was actually there because it happened right after he took morphine. So I
that could
actually thought
be.
it might have been a hallucination. I wasn't sure.
I don't know.
I got the impression it was real.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether it was real or not, it was creepy. So yeah.
Yeah. Two things that stuck out to me as the most horrifying two things in this completely horrifying experience. And this is not to say it's a bad movie, by the way. I think it's very effective and very well done. But it's so grim. And the two things that stuck out to me so much were when they throw the train that's taking all of the young men who have been conscripted into the army.
God, this scene.
And it stops at, I don't know, they stop at a train station and there's an older black man waiting for a train and they're just all leaning out the windows, just calling him every name. And then somebody throws like his lunch, like sandwich at him. And the old man can just do nothing but stand there and take it because it's South Africa in 1981. And it's just the fucking, it's a hard scene. And then the other thing that stuck out to me was the extended flashback of Nicholas at the summer, it's not a camp, it's like a country club, basically. Vacation place where where some other father, finds him looking at other boys in the shower and like loses his fucking mind. And in one, I don't really think there are a lot of cuts or any cuts even. I don't really remember specifically because it was so much. But when he drags Nicholas from the showers to the office, that's all one camera move. And it's just like, it's so horrifying.
It's brutal.
Just the way that, forget about the horrible, name calling and all that kind of stuff. But just to be a 13-year-old kid or however old he is in that scene, dragged by his wrists basically through an entire camp, being shouted at by this guy screaming for his parents and he can't do anything, and just the absolute trauma of that.
But then he's dragged out not just by that guy, he's also dragged out by his father too, right after that.
Right.
Which is also horrifying.
Right. And then now his father's not really in the picture in the end, right? This is his stepfather who's the mustache guy, right? In the beginning of the movie, and his father is the blonde guy.
But he does move in. His father's the blonde guy.
Right. And he moves in with his father, yes.
Right. And he sees off, and his father sees him off at the party before he's going off because he's the one who gives him the porn magazine.
The porno mag, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's
ammunition, as he calls it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's funny, Dave, that you talked about those two. See, I'm not funny, haha, but interesting because those are absolutely disturbing. And by the way, I don't think that was a sandwich they threw at the guy. I thought it was a bag of shit, actually.
Or puke, possibly, since guys were puking in those bags in the beginning when they got on the train.
Exactly. Yeah, because it was it was definitely not food. It's basically it.
Yeah, it was a liquid for sure.
When I say food, I mean like rotten food. But
regardless, it's repulsive. But that's what like stuck with me. I was like, oh my God, that's like so even like it's horrifying anyway. But like when I think of like a sandwich, I'm thinking of like, oh, a piece of bread on someone's head. And it's like, no, it's even more horrifying and revolting than that. But I also thought, and I know you talked about it off mic, but the scene I also am thinking about is this scene where the drill sergeant is berating the kid for not being able, because he's shaking because he's so tired, and he makes him do push-ups. And then also he berates Stassen, who is also queer, and he makes him go run and get a leaf off a tree. And then he comes back and then he's like, no, not the right leaf. And so he comes back with a branch, which is very funny and very, kind of, sassy, clever. And he like whips him with it, and then he like hits him so hard that he pukes, and he's screaming at him to get the puke back in his mouth. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just gutting. Like it's a brutal scene on top of, 50 other horrifying and brutal scenes in this.
Yeah. In case you needed any more evidence that apartheid was the worst. Yeah. Good God.
Yeah, this is such. I mean, I know it's brutal, and it is, but I think this is an incredibly pointed film about homophobia and queer identity and a culture that absolutely reifies toxic masculinity and compulsive heteronormativity at every possible moment. And it's just like, I mean, the fact that they're flinging around, slurs, homophobic slurs, and talking about, you know, their penises and, and berating them over their bodies, and just every moment they can to enforce them to be aggressive. And, and the guys even fight in their spare time with each other.
I was just thinking of the spin the bottle scene.
Yeah. And it's like, this is encouraged. This is what they're supposed to do. And it's very clear that Nicholas doesn't want to do this. He's also the only one we see who doesn't shout racist slurs at the black man out the window too.
Yeah.
And it's really, really interesting and disturbing to see this, and why it's also so touching and sweet and sad when Nick and Stassen have a very intimate, loving moment together in the trench and, at night. And then after they're both out of the military, he goes and visits him, but he clearly is, feels very differently when Nick tries to reach for his hand under the water and he pulls away. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I thought this was a fantastic movie. I think it is a really pointed commentary on the military, on apartheid, on homophobia. It's one of the things that I really dug about the movie is its eclectic musical choices.
Yes.
I like that it was like a really eclectic mix of like pop, rock, opera. I just thought that was really effective. Yeah. Summer Breeze.
Remix of several Rodriguez tunes. If you remember Rodriguez.
No.
I liked that there was not a lot of talking in places in the movie. This movie really is about showing you, not telling you, and letting the performances and the editing and the camera work really tell the emotions of the scene. And I thought it was really effective when combined with the music. And I liked that there were, scenes where we weren't getting much talking, but we could tell exactly what Nicholas was thinking or feeling in the moment, just based on the vibe that it was created.
I agree. I thought the score also was absolutely exquisite. I thought it was haunting, unsettling, but beautiful at the same time. Really had a tragic, somber tone to it. I absolutely loved the score and the soundtrack choices too. I completely agree with you, Evan.
Yeah. We should mention that the novel it's based on, the writer, let's see, Andre Karl van der Meer, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, based on his personal experiences as a conscripted young gay man in the apartheid era South African army. So,
and Oliver Hermanus, the director, is also a queer director as well.
Yeah. So, coming from a place of truth, I think.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen anything depicted presumably correctly as such evil as the South African regime. Just out and out evil. Wow.
You're absolutely right. I also am thinking about it. I am not a gay man, but I am a queer woman, and thinking about having to keep yourself closeted, not just choosing to, but obviously having to, or you will die. You will be sent to a psychiatric ward and pumped full of drugs, which is what happens to Stassen. And just the absolute terror that Nicholas exists in by having to hide himself constantly. And he showers alone. Like, there's a great scene where we see all of the men showering together, and then you see Nicholas, and it kind of seems like he's along with them. But then when he's done with his shower, you see he's completely alone because he doesn't want anyone, he doesn't want anything given away.
Mhm.
And it's so like on top of the evil of the drill sergeant and of the apartheid and of the military and of the racism, like and like everything on top of that, he also has to keep himself hidden throughout all of this. It's just so fucking tragic and just awful.
Yeah. And two other things that stuck out to me is the guy who kills himself in front of
Oh
them
my
all.
God, that's right.
Yeah.
Baxter, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
that's juxtaposed with them playing volleyball, talking about their upcoming break, and they're having a great time.
Right.
And then he runs out and shoots himself. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So sad.
and then
Yeah.
the end of the movie when Nicholas gets together with Stassen, who is very much changed by his experiences in the psychiatric hospital. And the last line of
Yes.
the movie is, "I have to go to the toilet."
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Nicholas is sitting alone on the beach, and it looks like he's sitting alone on the beach for a very long time.
Mhm.
And it's just like, what is it? Like, what's happened here?
Mhm.
Mhm.
It is a really, I don't know what happened. I don't know what it means. I do remember, I mean, I'm kind of speechless, as you can tell. I'm tripping over my words. So
Yeah, it is. There's something really somber about that ending. At least to me, when I was watching it, I kept hoping that we weren't going to just end with Nicholas sitting there by himself, but we do. And I don't know. There's something I think almost more emotionally painful to me about the open-endedness of that ending.
yeah.
Yeah.
agree.
Him just kind of sitting there and not having the resolution about where Stassen has gone, whether he's just abandoned him, whether he's coming back, or
Right.
what is going on there.
And how,
Like, is he hurting himself? Is he waiting for him to join him? Like, what's
yeah.
probably not, since he pulled away under the water, but like, we don't know. And and poor Nicholas just sitting there in solitude. Like,
Right.
Jesus.
And the message that I got was like, there is no respite,
No,
that,
no, there's not. Well, and that's really, it's interesting because when he comes home after being out of the military and he has that dinner with his mother and stepfather, and she's like, "You're home," and he's like, "Yep, in one piece." Like, it's so like bitter the way he says it, and it's like,
well,
yeah, you're in one piece, but you're not.
yeah, his stepfather says that to him before he leaves. He's
Oh,
like,
that's right.
hope you come back in one piece or whatever.
That's
and then,
right. Good pickup. That's right.
Yeah. I kind of get the impression that Nicholas's stepfather is a little bit of a fucking dope,
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
But it's funny talking about this because I was so glad, because I thought there was gonna be some horrible tragedy, because it's a war film, so of course tragedy is looming everywhere and death is looming everywhere, but also it's so common in queer films to have someone die. So I'm like, oh God, is one of them gonna die? Oh God, is Stassen dead? And then when I find, when you see them joyously driving along the coast and they're at the beach swimming so happy, I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna get a happy ending. And no.
no,
Not quite.
it's just an ending. You're alone.
Yeah.
Gay men in
No
South
such
Africa
luck.
are alone, basically, is the message that I got. So,
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's pretty much the message I got too.
yeah. Well,
On that happy note.
happy note.
Oh, but I also just want to say before we end, I think the acting is also absolutely incredible.
Mhm.
I think it's so good, and I think Nicholas and Stassen have such great chemistry together. And yeah, this just broke my heart.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
Two final things that I'll say. One, I thought the transformation of the Sax character was really interesting because he came in and he was very skeptical, and he was like the guy who is like the smart ass, chip on his shoulder, don't want to be here. And then later in the movie, we see him just pointing a gun at children, and he's like ready to basically shoot anybody.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really fascinating transformation to see for his character. And then the other piece that I'll say is I appreciate that as a war, army kind of movie, this pays homage to other movies like it feels very similar in some ways to Full Metal Jacket. And
Mhm.
you've got your requisite like marching and singing scene. You've got, the soldiers walking in the sunset. But even though it pays homage to other films, it feels unique both in the story that it's telling and the way that it's telling it, that you don't feel like it's a retread of other movies of its, ilk.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. This is such a scathingly anti-war film, and I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's necessary. There's a way to be respectful to veterans and military members while also being, scathing in your condemnation of military industrial complex. And I think this does that very well. And about Sax, I just want to say, I think on top of that, what also makes it a really gutting transformation, like you said, Evan, is that he's also the one who is very protective of Nicholas in the beginning. And he's, defends him and stands up for him and does what's right. And so to see him, of all people, be the one who's horrifying and basically committing human rights atrocities, it's just, it's even more horrible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to quote Megan on that happy note, that's Moffie. I would just say that, let's run through our 3 movies really quickly. Talk about where they're playing and all that stuff. The Truffle Hunters comes out today, Friday, is in limited release, and it's also on demand. And I'm on board with the Truffle Hunters, right? You two are too?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. The Power is on Shudder. It came out yesterday. So if you have Shudder, you can see that. I would say see it.
Me too.
I would too.
Yes. And I think we're all in agreement about Moffie. If you can handle it, you should see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think it's excellent. So definitely.
And that comes out today in theaters and on demand. So that, as they say, is that for another episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. I just told you where you can see all the movies. So I've done that. But I did want to say, and we all want to say, thank you to our editor, Otto Clammer, for taking the show out of our hands each week and taking that burden away from us and doing the editing for us.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank you, Otto.
Yeah. And as far as Spoiler Piece Theater goes, you can find the podcast anywhere you can find podcasts. So go to your favorite place, find it there. You can find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can follow us on social media. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. If you wanted to get in touch with us, tell us that Moffie is actually not as good as Full Metal Jacket, or is a completely different film and it's, blah, blah, blah. You can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you could give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
And you could leave us a voicemail and tell us what you think. If you like the show, please do us a favor by rating and reviewing us on ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. And if you really, really like the show, please join our Patreon. As I said at the top of the episode, this week we cover the 1940 screwball comedy, His Girl Friday, starring Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. And we'd also like to thank our patrons personally.
Yes, we want to give a huge thank you to Bill Scahan, Bob Chipman, Charles Nash, Chris Wilkinson, Davida Margolin, Deirdre Crimmins, Christopher Jensen, Max Coville, Mike Lord of the Sith, Rory Glynn, Sean Pensionar, Shauna Harris, Shelley M. McCaskill, Shona Glasgow, and Zach Pigeon. Thank you so much, patrons. You rock.
Thank you, patrons.
Thanks.
So my name is Dave Riedel. You can follow me on the tweets and the Instagrams and the Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies. I write about movies sometimes, and I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionS World and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.